Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to the Rattlecast. We're the biggest freewheeling live streaming poetry podcast on the planet, in your ears and on your laptops. Our guest for episode number 342 is Luigi Coppola. He'll be here in a few minutes, but before we begin, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do all this because we love poetry. I know you do too, so please do click on the like button and share. Make sure you're subscribed. Ring the bell for notifications. Whatever you can do to help spread poetry around the internet would be much appreciated. We're going to start out with our Poets Respond poet, like we always do. And we have yesterday's Poets Respond poet, Dario Cvencek, here to share his poem, Flower in a Field. Hey, Dario, how you doing?
Hey, Tim. Doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great, and so glad to have you here. I loved, one of the things I love about this poem is that it goes in a place of beauty, which not many poems do these days, in poetry.
No, we don't.
And so it's really fun to have that. Also, I've been feeling, I lived in Southern California for a long time, and I've never got to see a super bloom in Death Valley. And so I really enjoyed the fact that your poem was about this. Why don't you tell everybody what inspired it?
So I read an article. I haven't seen it in person, but I read an article about flowers now being blooming in Death Valley, and there were a lot of amazing pictures. It was an article by BBC, but one of the pictures was just this one flower against the sky, kind of in midst of different like bushes and whatnot, and that kind of like inspired the poem. Kind of like being in an environment in which you don't necessarily fit in, how do you still continue to bloom? How do you still continue to be noticed if there's no one to notice you? And that kind of like became a metaphor for what the poem is about.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful poem. You want to go ahead and read it?
Okay, yeah. So the poem is called Flower in a Field. A flower is still a flower in an empty field, even when no footsteps arrive to confirm it, even when the wind forgets its name and moves through like a thought that never stays long enough to become speech. A flower is still a flower in an empty field. I keep repeating this to myself like a way to stay upright on the edge of standing still, like a prayer in a foreign tongue, like a hand pressed lightly to the ribs of the world. There is nothing out there, and still something insists on being bright, on being seen without approval, like a pulse under skin that refuses to learn manners or the language of discretion, like a sigh caught mid-sentence, deciding it will not be edited down. A flower is still a flower in an empty field, even when no one comes to count its petals. It holds its shape against the wide silence, a small argument with nothingness. The sky does not answer, it only changes its mind about color, softly, as if indecision were a kind of mercy. A flower is still a flower in an empty field, as if meaning were a habit it could not quit, as if presence were something stubborn, something untrained in leaving. And the field, so practiced in being empty, learns briefly how to witness without touching, without keeping, without ending. I find myself thinking about how tenderness survives, without audience, without proof, without approval, how it doesn't ask to be chosen, only noticed suddenly, like breath you almost forgot you were holding.
Yeah, beautiful poem. I love both the beauty and the energy of that. And I happen to see, Dario, that because you have your Instagram link included underneath the poem. If anybody wants to follow Dario on Instagram, go do that. But you posted a shorter version of this poem earlier in the week, I think, and then expanded it, it looks like. And so I'm curious about the writing process. Did it start out as a shorter poem that you kept going back to?
It just started with the first line, a flower is a flower in an empty field. And then I kept adding to it, and I really did not know how to end it. So that's why it kept growing. But then in the end, like this idea of like holding a breath, because when you see something beautiful, you hold your breath. But it also can also be like you hold your breath when you're anxious. So that kind of was a good metaphor to kind of tie all the different themes in the poem at the end.
Yeah, well, it's a beautiful poem and so breathless in its energy too. So perfect ending. Glad
Thank
you
you.
found it.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for joining us today and for sharing that Poet Respond poem. Yeah, so that was Dario Cvencek with A Flower in a Field. That was the Poet Respond poem yesterday at Rattle.com. If you have any poems about current events, that was about the blooming that's happening right now in Death Valley and other things, of course, happening in the background. But anything that's going on, whether it's the biggest news stories, small stories you happen to see, if you see anything in the news, write a poetic response to it. Keep poetry part of the conversation. Submit it to Rattle.com by midnight Friday night, and we publish a poem about the news every Sunday. Also, you get those poems in your inbox by going to Rattle.com, and down at the bottom, type in your email address. In the footer there, you'll see the sign-up page. Sign up to get poems like that every single day, especially on Sundays. So now we're going to take a quick break and go to our main guest. So sit tight, and we'll be right back with a whole lot more poetry. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. Like I said, today's guest is Luigi Coppola. Luigi's appeared in many issues of Rattle and won the Ekphrastic Challenge 3 times. He's a teacher, poet, DIY music producer, and multimedia artist, recording and performing as the only emperor. First-generation immigrant and avid rum and coke drinker as well. A graduate of the Warwick University Creative Writing Program, he's a Bridport Prize shortlisted, Ledbury and National Poetry Competition longlisted, has been included in the Poetry Archive Worldview winners list as well. He has performed poetry and music across the UK, including at the Poetry and Words tent at Glastonbury, literature festivals in Brighton, Coventry, and London, and numerous events, slams, and open mics. In 2023, he collaborated with the American singer Kyla Gabka on her debut album, Waiting for Autumn. His most recent book is Even God Gets Distracted Sometimes, combining his poems with visual art by Mark Shuttleworth. And here he is, Luigi Coppola. Hey, Luigi, it's great to see you after all these years.
Hello, Tim, and hello, folks. Hello, the Rattle world. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you're a poet I've wanted to have for a long time. I keep thinking, I should have Luigi on, and then I forget at the time that I'm doing the invites. But you have such interesting poems you've always sent. We've published you in many issues of Rattle, the Ekphrastic Challenge, a whole bunch. And there's always like some unusual take or way of presenting or thinking that your poems have. So I'm really curious to get to know you better. Do you want to start out with one of those poems? And let everybody know, we're going to have some screen sharing going on in this episode. And Luigi's got a lot of mixed media stuff that he's going to share with us.
Oh, yeah, thank you, Tim. So I'm going to share my screen, share sound, and hopefully as a background. Hopefully that will all work. Right, so can you see me and see the Rattle screen?
Perfect.
And hear me still?
Yep.
Great stuff. So that's all working. Great stuff. So I thought I'd go with. I do love how the Rattle website works. I can just look up things very easily. I thought I'd go all the way back to 2019 when you first published a poem of mine. And it was a beautiful ekphrastic image, Bella the Bull by Vasutulia. And I love the ekphrastic challenges, partly because it stops me being lazy, Tim. It keeps me writing. It keeps me coming back, which I think is so important. And it was a stunning image, and I was really happy with the piece. And it is called "My Mother Was a Dancer, and She Never Looked Back." And why would you? When up ahead is vermilion, gold, when the dress you wear is billowed by poise, hemmed with every minute of every hour you practiced. Each step a step forward, each twirl gathers momentum for the next movement. The soles of feet parallel, straight, laced, hair tied tight, draped down a shoulder, taut, intense air where hopes spring up like sped up film, seed to flower in seconds. And that is how fast life feels. If you turn your head for a moment, you've missed it. Left wondering, where has my partner gone? Where is the audience? Who has been judging me this whole time?
Yeah, so wonderful poem. That was
Thanks, Tim.
yeah, that was My Mother Was a Dancer and She Never Looked Back from Rattle's Ekphrastic Challenge. And you've won. Hey, why don't we switch back to in between to the regular view off screen sharing there so we can see it. Yeah, there we go. So yeah, so that was one of the many. I think it's 3 times, and there haven't been that many people who've won the Ekphrastic Challenge more than once. And it's cool to see, and especially you have artist picks and editors picks in there. So before we talk about anything else, let's talk about that, about the Ekphrastic Challenge and how you approach it. You said already that it helps you keep from being lazy to doing it. But there's so much more to it than that. There's so much more to making an actual poem all its own out of someone else's artwork. So let everybody know, because a lot of people that are listening submit to that regularly too. How do you approach it when you see a piece of art? And do you write about them every week too, or every month? Or do you just write when you're sort of inspired by the piece?
I think the choices of the images are
Oh, hey Luigi, I think your mic went out.
always
There
fascinating.
you go, you're back.
I don't think
You're back.
Can people hear me now?
Yep.
Hello, I'm back. So I was saying lots of horrible things, but no, it's fine now. So the image has always been fascinating, and I've always loved
Oh, you cut out again. I don't know what's...
Ekphrastic right. How annoying.
There you go.
Let me see if I can change. Maybe it's the wrong mic.
Yeah, cut out there. Yeah, it's not the Zoom. It's definitely the mic's like... there we go. You're back.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it's just cutting in and out. I don't know if it's like... Maybe it's super noise canceling or something.
I've switched. Oh, how strange. I'll see if I can change. How's that?
Okay, let's see. That was good? Nope, it's cutting again.
Tim, is that better?
That is, yeah. Okay. It's gone again. What is going on here?
Let me see if I can. Yeah. But
maybe it's the bandwidth.
Noise
The bandwidth
removal,
is low, it says.
Microphone. How's
Let's see.
that? Is that what's a bit better? Something is working, and
Yeah, I think, Luigi, your bandwidth is low, it says, which it wasn't like that before.
I'll keep talking. I was wondering if I can change. I'll keep trying. Maybe if I close this window. How's that? Has that worked a little bit better?
Yeah, well, your audio's staying. I think it's actually the bandwidth on your internet connection. I don't know if somebody else is on your Wi-Fi too or something that wasn't before, maybe.
I'll have to shout at my family, I suppose. Maybe they're on Netflix. Is that a bit better? I've just changed a few settings.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
How's that?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, great stuff. Okay, all right.
Okay.
Let's see how it goes. I suppose. I'll write a letter instead and post it to you if it doesn't work. It will get to you eventually. We'll go old school. Yeah. So the Ekphrastic challenge really keeps me writing, and I think that's so important, especially with with people struggling with writer's block and being distracted. Being focused on a piece of art and how they overlap with other art forms, I think is so important. It keeps you stimulated, keeps you going, and keeps you interacting. I think it was the British poet Adrian Mitchell said that most people ignore poetry because most poetry ignores people. And I think as soon as you respond to something, whether it's art or with the Rattle responding, you're looking at current affairs. I think that's so important as a writer to engage with the other stimuli as much as possible.
Yeah, definitely. And then it's also about finding your own sense of, I think, what your personal reaction is, right, to the artwork, because it can't just be describing what you see. I think I think a lot of people make the mistake of thinking that, oh, if I'm describing this in the universal way that everybody is going to approach the piece, that'll be more people will enjoy it. But really, it's the opposite, I think, right? Like you find some personal connection, some way to go that connects to you on a really intimate level.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's the power of poetry in a lot of ways, where the specific and the individual becomes universal. And you don't want to be too bland or use cliches or just be an AI description of an image that is propping up more and more in today's society. We don't need that. We need, like you said, that individual response. And my writing process often for the Ekphrastic is to brainstorm different interpretations, different ideas, see what I like, and then sort of go off on a tangent with that.
Yeah. Well, you do it so well, and I always appreciate it. Let's go back to your background as a poet. Like, what drew you into writing poetry, and is it something that you were always pursuing? And I know you mix music too, so that must come into play at some point.
Yeah, the music came. I've always been interested in music and music production. As a teen, I was in various bands, but I could never find a group of people that wanted to stick all the way through. And that's kind of why I like poetry, because for better or worse, it's me, and the weight is on my shoulders, which means obviously when I mess up, that's all my responsibility. But if I do it, then I've done it on my own as much as possible. Poetry came to me as a teenager. I was writing rubbish, emo, angsty teenage love poems when I was 13 or 14, and then I discovered a line scratched into a table at my school. It's the first line of Philip Larkin's "This Be the Verse." I assume I can't swear, right?
Oh, you can
Tim?
swear. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, all right, fair enough. They fuck you up, your mum and dad, and it is the amazing first line. I highly recommend the poem. And I saw it and it kind of blew my mind, and I didn't even know it was a poem. And it was years later when I did A-level college sort of courses in English that I discovered it was a poem, and I worked backwards, and it sort of inspired me to write. I was at Glastonbury Festival. This is back in the mid-90s. I'm showing my age here. And I went there for the music, but stumbled on a poetry tent and spent the whole weekend there and did my first performance live at Glastonbury Festival. Not on the pyramid stage, not on the big stage or anything like that, but in the sort of hippie green fields. And it sort of stuck with it. And then 30 years later, I'm here, still writing and performing as much as possible and doing music and collaborating as much as I can as well.
Yeah. Well, let's hear another poem. What do you want to share next?
I think stay with the vein of the Ekphrastic writing. I think why don't we go to a second Ekphrastic one? So I'll just share my screen again. I'm glad everything's worked out, which is quite good. And share. Okay, how's that? So can we see an animal understudy?
Yep.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so this is from 2022. I remember getting your email about this poem on the at 1 o'clock in the morning, my time, on my birthday. So it was a really lovely surprise. Thanks, Tim. My animal understudy replaced me in the school production of The Tempest. And it comes with a beautiful image by Sarah Jane Crawson as well. Fast as Caliban, my shuddered spine and wrung hands hid me in the wings. When my cue came, I sweated through the makeshift costume of tissue feathers and glued fur and plastic teeth and rubber claws and cardboard scales and rug skin and tinfoil tusks and foam horns and wire wings and a sting that flopped behind me. An amalgamation of animals, both free now and fossilized then, all brought to semi-life off stage. Papier-mâché hooves clung to the boards, treading a stillness that couldn't be moved no matter how much the teacher/director/failed actor push-pulled, shout, whispered, tug, shoved at my stuffed, bursting frame. Then something inside me stepped out. Part thought, part instinct. I watched my wing from my wingless wings and envied what I heard and saw and felt. Every word spoken, spotlighted, every step stilled the air, every gesture so weighted they shook the hands of all that watched. The servant acted equal to the master. And so was. Amongst the noises, sounds, and sweet airs of the aisle, the stage, and this brave new world. The applause lasted the length of a storm.
Yeah, so that was my animal understudy replaced me in the school production of The Tempest, another great Poet Respond poem. Ekphrastic Challenge poem by Luigi Coppola. And you notice if you were watching and not just listening, the underneath there was a link to a lyric video that you did, Luigi.
Yes.
Although I see that it's not embeddable in the new website, so that's something I have to fix.
It's not embeddable, but you can go to the site and play it. The link still works, which is quite good, and you can check it out there. I'll send out the links as well for various things.
Yeah, well, it's really cool that you do that with lyric videos. Do you want to go back to the stuff screen? Yeah. So it's cool. So a lot of times when we published I think we've published 5-year poems maybe over the years, if I'm doing the math right. And very often you make it a lyric video that we link to in the notes or something like that. And I'm always just fascinated with people who are trying to push the boundaries of what a poem can be. You know, where we're so fixed on this idea that a poem is something that appears in a book, and there's all these limitations. I mean, the length of a line tends to be the amount that fits nicely on a page of a book with some white space around it, you know, and there's so much that we conform to just based on this sort of assumption that poems live in books. But of course, they have this tradition. They're really part of the oral tradition where we speak them, and they're a sound and they're a performance. And so I'm always fascinated by people who try to push that envelope and do different things. How do you approach those lyric poem videos that you do? And I guess why do that in the first place?
Why is a very good question. If I was honest, it's sort of middle of my writing years, I got fed up with not necessarily not being taken seriously, or not having enough exposure, or not being able to get things out there. And of course, that look in most people's eyes when you say, I'm going to read a poem, and our relationship with music and film and TV is so much bigger in the cultural awareness. I think there's a big discussion about how poetry sort of ebbs and flows in terms of its popularity. And I think what you said, Tim, as well, it's such arbitrary restrictions, the page of the poem. And the same thing happened with music 100 years ago when the production happened. But yeah, poetry is, originally was an oral tradition, passing down stories and history. So I love that idea. In terms of like approaching how to get to the song, being a poet first, I try to serve whatever the poem is. When I write it, I can look at it and go, right, no one's ever going to read this. I don't want anyone to read this. This will stay in a box. Or I go, right, this is a page poem. This is a performance poem. This is a poem that I can adapt into lyrics because of the sonics that are in there. So, and if I ever try to go against what the poem wants, it will come back and bite me. It will tell me that you're trying to force me into something that it's not supposed to be. So some things sort of lend itself lyrically to music or to performance as well, or just to be read on the page. So I try to let the piece guide me as much as possible.
Mm-hmm. And how much did you have any experience making videos before you started making these? Is it difficult to do? Is playing with it part of the fun for you? Like seeing out, if a poem lends itself a certain way, seeing what you can do with that and what that can add, is that part of the fun?
Oh, definitely. I took a bit of a right angle approach to it because being a teacher, I've been an English teacher for over 20 years. PowerPoint was my main tool for teaching. And so I very awkwardly used PowerPoint to create my first earlier videos. But now, with the advancement of technology and websites and so on, it's so much easier. There's CapCut and Clipchamp and there's lots of music production, free software. If you want to spend thousands of pounds on proprietary applications, that's fine as well. But there's so much free stuff. The amount of things you can do on Instagram and TikTok with a video and YouTube as well. The inbuilt editing software, I highly recommend people just experiment with it and have fun with it. Especially Instagram and TikTok have an auto lyric upload, where I used to spend hours tinkering with the lettering of a lyric video. A lot of that can be done automatically now as well. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. It makes you think and approach poetry in different ways. So yeah, I would definitely recommend it. And it is just fun to tinker around with it as well.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask about how it changes your approach. Knowing that you might be using it in a different medium and things you might learn in the act of presenting, in that audio-visual way. How does that affect the way you write poems and the way you try to engage with an audience?
In terms of engaging with an audience, depending upon, especially if it's a live event, you can get a feel for what the audience might be open to, but then you might want to push them and experiment with poetry or music or performance. In terms of the writing process, I'm going to be honest. If I start to think, oh, I'm going to write some song lyrics today, I want to write a sonnet today, like 9 times out of 10, the poem will not listen to me and will be whatever it wants to be. And as soon as you try to force it into something, I mean, I'm reminded of Charles Bukowski. I think it's his gravestone as well. Don't try, which people take as a negative, like nihilistic sort of interpretation. But for me, it was like, unless it becomes from a natural place and flows naturally, you're trying to force something too much. And there are many hours in the day. So if one poem doesn't quite fit what you think it's going to work into, you've always got next month's Rattle Ekphrastic to try out anyway.
Yeah.
Bit of a plug there, Tim.
Yeah, perfect. Nice plug. Smooth. Let's do another poem. I don't know if you're going to go back to the Ekphrastic Challenge again, but let's do another one.
Yeah. The most recent one, The Rolling Us, which I really enjoyed writing. So I will share the screen again. It's this side here. I'm in the corner. Perfect. So when we talked about the multimedia side of it, the most recent one was The Rolling Us, which was in February this year, which I really, really enjoyed. And what I often try to do is build a link tree. So I might have my own reading, a music video version, and links and so on, links to my book and so on. So if I go to the actual page, it was a fantastic image by Marina Korenfeld, who I befriended on Instagram, and she gave a lovely comment about the poem as well. So I was really pleased that she enjoyed it. And it was really nice to have poems picked by the editors and this time to be picked by the artists as well. So it's really nice to have that sort of contrast between the two. So this is the Rolling Us. We decide unanimously and without a meeting that the ground has been underappreciated. Cars sulk in driveways, planes cough apologetically in their hangars. We pat their bonnets and fuselages and say, it's not you, it's us. And for once it's true. So we climb on top of balls, not metaphorical ones, actual spheres. We wobble at first. Humanity's always believed in flat things, straight lines. But the Earth is round. And we suspect that it's been trying to tell us something. The babies begin. We set them on globes of cotton wool, soft as clouds, but with ambition, with a toddle, a tumble. They learn balance before they learn borders. Their balls leave no mark but laughter. The burliest among us carve wooden spheres from fallen trunks. They roll through towns like benevolent boulders, planting saplings along their path. Forests sprout in their wake. Muscles rediscover purpose. Leg day, they say solemnly, as they push another oak into the future. Those of us that wore suits and frowned at quarterly reports melt down our surplus plastic and mould it into translucent orbs. As we roll from city to city, we hand out fruit from tote bags slung at our sides. A nice, round, juicy apple, we declare, is the original fast food. Our balls glow faintly with yesterday's waste, reborn, humming. Teachers scratch equations directly onto their chalk spheres and let the rain work them out. Journalists roll on papier-mâché globes made from old newspapers, absorbing the print of the terrain and make that the story. Teenagers decorate theirs with band logos and petals. We move slower. We arrive more often, even if there are mishaps. Hills are thrilling in ways we hadn't budgeted for. We collide, apologise, exchange seeds. We consider that momentum is a conversation with gravity, not a conquest of it. Roads crack. Grass pries them open like curious fingers. Petrol stations become orchards. Flight paths fill with migrating geese who look mildly impressed. We say we are going back to basics, but really we are going forward differently. We balance because the planet does. We travel by curve instead of by combustion. And for the first time in a long time, we feel the world rolling with us instead of away.
Yeah, that was The Rolling Us, another great poem by Luigi Coppola. And so, Luigi, we've seen your style in so many ways with these first three poems. And one of the things that we see really clearly, too, is your performance of the poems. You're not just reciting, you're performing and living the poems out as you do it. And I'm wondering how much, work has gone into that and how you approach reading a poem publicly. Because I know you've done that a lot and you do it with a lot of skill. And also here, I mean, I'm wondering how you treat, I guess, the poem. Are you doing it different every time, or is it sort of this is how the poem you hear it and it's always this way, and you're sort of enacting how it feels inside of you, or are you like experimenting and twisting? Like, do you always have the same pauses and the same kind of dramatic turn at the same spot, or is it? Are you feeling as you go, or are you revealing as you go?
It's a really great question, Tim. It's a combination, and I think poems change their meaning to you as you get older, as your things in your life change and things happen to you. So in terms of like the emotions in a poem, the pauses, there will be some variations. I would rehearse, especially for performance pieces that I've memorized. I know the beats and I know when I want to do certain things or not certain things. When you're reading the poem, you'll have those pauses where you speed up or you slow down, you focus. You might have them in your mind and you've rehearsed it, but on the night, things do change. And the environment, the fact that I'm reading it on a screen and I'm scrolling down and I'm anticipating what is coming up, change the way I was reading it. And I'm also, when you're reading it as well, line breaks, enjambment and end stops, I think become really important, and they help you judge where you need to be. Clive James talked about pauses after a line break and a double pause for stanza break, and he would force himself to add those pauses in between the lines. If you talk to Shakespearean actors, Ian McKellen, I think in the 80s, gave a masterclass. It's on YouTube. I highly recommend it. And he talks about the ambient pentameter rhythm and how he lets Shakespeare inform his performance, but without it being da-dum, 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 without it being regimental, but he lets the emotion carry over the rhythm that's already there. So the poem has its own natural rhythms, and depending upon how I feel, when my voice breaks, when I want to shout or not shout, I would change it in the performance.
Yeah, I think so much of it too is confidence. I think so many people are, they read a poem and they're afraid of what the poem says or how they're being perceived as they read it. Was that something you ever had to overcome? Because I think that's one of the things that it feels like you're so free being confident in the poem to take a big pause and let that silence expand and then shout something and then have an emotion here. But if you're not feeling confident about it, you end up kind of just rushing through and your hands shaking and you're hoping it's over. And there's a very big difference in the performance in that case. Is that something you had to work toward, or is that just your personality?
I think it's a combination of many things. I do think it's age. I've been writing and performing for over 30 years. And there's also an element of like, I know there's people listening and watching, but when you're performing, you don't care about the audience. You don't care about the listener. It's what it means to you. Because as soon as you think, oh, what is the audience thinking? Or what would they think if I do this or that? Straight away, you've given brain power and emotional power, and you've lost it straight away. Whereas, and it links back to what you said about writing, Tim, about being specific about yourself, and that becomes universal. And I think that's the same with performance as well. You do it the way you want to do it, and if it works, it works. But as soon as you start tailoring it for the listener more than yourself, I mean, you're selling something then, aren't you? You're not being true to the poem or the performance or the moment. So part of it is a punk ethic FU to the audience. I'm going to do it the way I want to do it, and hopefully it works. And if it doesn't, you might get shouted at and kicked out of the venue, or dropped from the live stream maybe.
Yeah. So over those 30 years of performing, are there any? Because on the chat, people were all talking about your great performing of these poems too.
I've not been able to keep up with the chat. It's a shame because I need to focus on this. I'll definitely go back to that at some point.
So what advice would you have that you've learned over those 30 years as far as trusting your poems, earning it, how to do it in a way that engages? What is the, I guess, biggest thing that you learned along the way?
Okay. Unless you're going into a specific improv space, rehearse. And poets can cheat at this. I don't need a soundstage. I don't need the lights. A poet can rehearse in their head more easily than an actor or the front man of a band can. So I would go over the poem again and again and again. If you can memorize it, great. If you can't, it's not a problem. In my experience, there's a big, especially in the London area in England, there's a big movement away from people reading from phones or even reading from a book. And in my experience, the poet cares more about that than the audience. The audience doesn't care if you're reading from a screen or a piece of paper or you're improvising it. If it's good, it's good. It doesn't matter if you're reading it or memorized. And there's a quite famous acting phrase: for every minute that you're on stage, you should have rehearsed for an hour. So if a poem is 3 minutes long, have you practiced that for 3 hours? And have you recited that poem over and over again until you know it inside and out? It's not necessarily memorized, but you know what it's saying and you know how it goes along. Method actors did this all the time. Like Robert De Niro has quite a famous story with in Taxi Driver with Jodie Foster, where he would say the same lines, go over the same 10-second bit with Jodie Foster 100 times, and she became so annoyed, and she was quite a young actress as well, and then on the 100th time De Niro switched and he changed something, and that made her improvise something or feel the actual emotions in that particular moment. I think poetry is like that as well. The better you know it, the better you can sort of go around it. After that, it's stage time, like going out and reading as much as possible to a live audience, and you'll naturally feel more comfortable as you go along.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
well, that's definitely
great advice, and definitely something that nobody does. I mean, having 3 hours practice for a 3-minute poem is not. And I was thinking actually, as you read of the way Robert Pinsky, he was a guest a while ago, the former U.S. Poet Laureate, and he just sort of riffs in a jazz way on poems, and they're a little bit different every time. I think because you said the word improvise, and he kind of is improvising, he's going. And I was thinking about poets like that, who are giving readings over and over again. They're actually reading the same poems in the same way a band is doing the same song, and they're getting to, experiment with little subtle changes like that, and they get the 10,000 hours with their album or whatever that a poet hardly ever does with their book. So definitely the practice is really useful. And there's just so many things that we should do a better job of as far as getting poetry out in front of a public who'll care about it. We sort of take for granted that they won't, and so we don't even bother maybe. And there's so much more we could be doing. But anyway, let's hear another poem. We should do another one.
Yeah, why do we switch? Since we talked so much about multimedia, I haven't done the song yet for it. So why don't I try out? I mean, this is technology pending, of course. But if I share the screen again, but this time I'll be going to my PowerPoint. I'm gonna have to see if this works.
Looking good.
So, looking good, great stuff. So, why don't we go to this poem here? And can we hear that, Tim?
Yep, perfect.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so let's move to my debut collection, which is now. It took me 30 years, Tim, to get my debut collection. So it's been hard fought, but I've done it the way I want. And ironically, with Ekphrastic challenges as well, I've been working with an artist. This image is from Mark Shuttleworth, and it's one of the first images he sent me. We're both teachers, and we were working in the same school. This is about 15 years ago now. And we were in the pub on a Friday night crying, as all teachers do on a Friday night. Shout out to all the fellow teachers out there. And Mark mentioned he was an artist. I mentioned I was a poet. And we sort of collaborate together. He sent me this image, and as soon as I saw it, I thought about myself as a parent. I've got two teenagers, and yeah, as you can imagine, our relationship goes up and down. And when I wrote this poem, I saw this duologue, and then as soon as I wrote that, I thought this will work. I think I could make this work as a song. So let's give this a go. It's called What Old Father Earth Asked of His Daughter, and now all good streaming platforms. My daughter, melancholy. No, my father, I cannot stay, but I have built a world for you. I'm sorry, father, it will not do. Or what of the trees that dance in the breeze? I'm sorry, father, they will not please. And what of the cave where sprites rave? I'm sorry, father, I do not crave. Then I will rumble, and I will quake, I will destroy, and I will unmake, I will cave in, and I will tear down, I will burn, and I will drown unless, oh child, oh daughter, you stay. Oh no, my father, not even a single day. Well, one stream where fish stroke me, I am sorry, father, I am not king. Then tell me, child, what do you need? And what can I make to keep you a seed? I am sorry, father, I need the sky where my mother is free to fly. I need the sea where sisters drift. I need the mist where grandmothers sit. I will rumble, and I will quake, I will destroy, and I will unmake, I will cave in, and I will tear down, I will burn, and I will drown unless, oh child, oh daughter, you stay. Oh no, my father, not even a single day. It is not you. You are not to blame, but father and daughter are not the same. You held on earth and you call it home. My kid and I, we must run, and we must roam, and I will fight, I will destroy, and I will unleash, I will cave in, and I will tear down, I will burn, and I will drown unless, oh child, oh daughter, you stay. Oh no, my father, not even a single day.
Wow. Well, that was really cool. The people in the chat are amazed right now. They really enjoyed that. And we did not expect, the rock to break out and the hair to come down. That was pretty cool.
Yes. My family complain about this all the time. I grew my hair long and I have it up all the time because I don't want it to bother me. And it seems to only come down when I'm performing poetry. So it's like a bit of an alter ego. But yeah, thank you. That's an example of poem, visuals, animation, lyrics, performance. And to me, that's what I try to strive for in pieces that work together like that, and try to bring all those elements together. Oh, sorry, Tim, I'm a bit out of breath now.
No, yeah, take a
and
sip.
I've lost my hairband as well. I can't put my hair up now.
Well, everybody on the chat too, they're saying you better watch the actual video as well as because there's a lot of people that just listen to this on a podcast version. So come to the YouTube and see the actual visual. But you can see, I mean, the mix of the rock music and the poetry, because it's spoken and half sung and then sometimes sung and then go back and forth, and that the lyrics are so clear. Is that you playing the guitar?
No, I'm very much a DIY bedroom producer. So I use beats, loops, and samples that are free to use online. There's an amazing site called looperman.com, which is where I get most of my stuff from. That's all Creative Commons. But I do collaborate with musicians and other performers. Kyla Gabka is an amazing singer in Chicago. Shout out Kyla if she's there. Her debut album that I wrote with her is amazing as well. In fact, that piece there, What Old Father Earth, she has done a cover. She has it on her debut album. Her version is completely different to mine. And gives a different perspective to the relationship there. So that's on Spotify, if people want to check that out as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's Kyla Gabka, Gabka, and the album is Waiting for Autumn, if anyone wants to find that. And that's a great teaser for searching it out and seeing how different it is.
Thanks, Tim. You're on commission, right?
Yeah, definitely. I get a penny per download, which is more than the artist gets, I think.
That's more than I get, Tim.
I know, exactly. Yeah, so you mentioned, this first book, Even God Gets Distracted Sometimes, is 30 years in the making before having a book. Wow. So why is that? Doing so much, but you still wanted a book too, even though a book is we already talked a little bit about, a book is sort of old-fashioned in the digital age. It's the way we are used to doing things, but it still means something to have a book. So what does it mean to have a book, and why have books, not albums, given that you could have all this on Spotify with the music,
Yeah, I think, I don't know, maybe it's a generational thing. It is, I wanted to have a physical book out through traditional publishing. Maybe that's a failing in me. I don't know. I felt that that's how I wanted to do it. And the fact that it came out from a collaboration with Mark Shuttleworth, the artist, who's an amazing artist, friend of mine. He doesn't do social media. He hates promotion. So I'm the face of the operation. But it was a collaboration. It took 30 years to get that debut collection. But I'm kind of happy that was, because I've spoken to so many younger poets that even when they release a pamphlet or even a poem, and they're in their late teens, early 20s, even 6 months later, they don't feel connected to the poems anymore. They've changed as people. And I think I had a long apprenticeship, but it means I stand by what I publish now, whether it's good or bad, or it's how I feel now. And I trust my voice and my writing, and I'll stand by it as much as I can. Obviously, I've still got that teenage angsty poet hidden in the loft somewhere that no one will ever see. But I try to put out things that mean something to me, and I take pride in that as much as possible. Yeah, I think that answers the question.
Definitely does, yeah. Well, let's get another poem queued up. And while you do that, I'll say, if anybody's enjoying this conversation, I'm sure you are, please do click the like button. It always helps. There's always twice as many people watching as have clicked live at this point, and it helps to spread poetry around, especially now. It's a smaller audience than normal because everyone's be coming in not realizing it was an early show at 8 p.m. Eastern later tonight. If you're watching later and this isn't live for you, still click the like button. That always helps. But if you are watching live, leave some questions too in the chat window, and I'll pass any along if you've got any for Luigi. But yeah, let's hear the next one. I want to make sure we get to a good number. I don't know if we're going to get to all 8 at the pace we're going.
No, yeah, of course. I'm happy to.
Let's do another one.
Yeah. Yeah. Why don't I go for another song? This time a bit quieter, I think. Let's see if I get this down correctly. A Bird on a String. Okay, so this is, I think, the last poem in the collection. And Mark, the artist, hates it, partly because he doesn't like the image that I cropped. The bird on a string was cropped from a bigger picture, and he always got annoyed at me for that. But anyway, as soon as I saw this, it kind of freaked me out a little bit. So Mark sent me this image first of this bird on a string. And as soon as I saw it, I thought, you see dogs on leads all the time, and you don't bat an eyelid. As soon as you see a bird on a leash, on a string, it sort of weirded me out a little bit. So this is called A Bird on a String, and I'll do the song version. So this is called, maybe the image gave it away already, A Bird on a String. Wild wings whip against the line, knotted tight in a bind design, strung up spasm, black and grey, its feathers catch and strain and fray. A bird on a string, on a string, a bird. A bird on a string, on a string, a bird. Twists its head to scan the sky as claws clutch air too warm, too dry. It gasps for life, not hung mid-flight. It is wrenched, earthed, a tangled kite. A bird on a string, on a string, a bird. Bird on a string, on a string, a bird. Narrow shadows of spit and snare meet, tethered him and strangled prayer. The string is taut, it hums and it sings as clear skies fill with freer wings. A bird on a string, on a string, a bird. A bird on a string, on a string, a bird.
Yeah, that was Luigi Coppola with A Bird and a String. Another great performance and mixing so much. Cindy Gore says, what an art... Wait, no. That was a question. Mary Lisa says, what a refreshing take on a poetry reading. And they definitely are. It's just so fun and so different. And it reminds me, there's I heard there's sort of a genre of music like something meaning wave, where it's like people giving lectures with music in the background. And
that sounds fascinating.
And it's psychedelic, says Joanna Pendleton, which I love.
Thank you.
It is. It's such an interesting way to present poems, and I do wonder, why Are there other poets you know that are doing this kind of thing, Luigi? And is there a community of poets doing this, or sort of is it Luigi on an island?
That might be the title of my next collection, Tim. I think maybe. God, yeah, in London. So I live in southeast London, UK. There is a massive poetry scene. There's a massive music scene, theatre scene. What I love about London is that whatever you're interested in, whatever poetry or fetish that you might be interested in, you'll find your people, you'll find your crowd. So yes, I'm not gonna. I mean, there's lots of people in London doing amazing performance poetry, experimental music, installations, happenings as well, which was a big movement in London as well. Even sort of flash mobs that go out and interact with people. London, there's flash readings where a group of people gather together and at the same moment will just sit and read their book in silence, and it's surreal being there. And I've performed all across London in galleries or in pubs, open mics and festivals. My favourite place to perform is on the street. My background is that performance poetry, and especially now having a physical book, which after 30 years is a bit weird. It's odd to have it's odd to have a product, because I used to just do the poetry and then that would be it, and it will be gone into the ether. But having a product to sell sort of changed my view of it. But I love going up to people and saying, my opening line is, "Would you like a free poem?" And most people will fixate on the word free. What was that? Free what? So I say maybe the poem bit quiet, and then I go into my spiel and I show them the book, which is available to buy. But I love giving people that free reading and the free performance, and to me that's really important, getting that out as much as possible. And one last thing about that as well is it's also an attempt to avoid an echo chamber, and being in a London poetry scene where it's poets talking to poets, which I think is very, very dangerous. It needs to be out in the open and talking to other people. It's not, but they're not mutually exclusive. It's great to have a community like here at Rattle, and it's great to converse with other poets. But people should need to get out and spread poetry as much as possible to people that wouldn't normally be reading the poem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I definitely agree, and that's always been the challenge at Rattle. I don't want it to be poets reading poets, but it is. I mean, it's people who are subscribers for the most part. I think it's like 80% of our subscribers have submitted poems to us at some point. So that's just the way it goes. Dick Westheim had a question about what you're doing here. He says, "First, I love the multimedia performance aspect of these poems. Could you address the creative aspects of using other artists' loops in your mixed media presentations? And I know you do so much collaboration too, so maybe you could talk about just collaborating and that experience, why you do it generally."
Yeah, so my first port of call is to work with people. Kyla Gabka, like I said, is an amazing singer. One of my best school friends from 40 years ago is an amazing guitarist and producer, and we're working on stuff like that. I work with a drone music producer who has these amazing pieces of kit which just has a million dials. It's like something from Doctor Who, and it's just great working with them on live music and them creating something specific. Using beats, loops and samples, obviously you need to get permission from the artist, or there's something called Creative Commons rights, or public domain recordings, for example. So as long as you work within those boundaries and you've got permission from the artist, of course. I mean, there's so many famous cases of musicians sampling other people's songs and then they're taken to court. Rolling Stones, The Verve, Ed Sheeran. So many examples of that. Yeah, so of course, get permission or create your own, or use things that are in the public domain as much as possible. And then don't feel afraid to experiment with as much as possible as well, adapting it and refining it and making it work with the poem, because then it becomes a conversation between your words, whether they become lyrics or not, and the music as well. And then, of course, when you perform it, there's another layer of interpretation there as well, and how that's presented in terms of the music and the words. Sorry, I can't keep an eye on the questions. I hope that answers that question. If not,
No,
please
you don't have to
hook
keep
me
an eye
up.
on anything. I'll pass along stuff
Okay.
to you. But yeah, and I should say too, we do the same thing at Rattle. We have bumper music. Nat O'Keefe and the Bow Ties. Dude, Where's My Horse is our opening and
Okay.
closing. We've got some other ones too. I had a friend who had has a blues band, and we try to use the music from their band as the opening and closing at the very beginning of the
Okay.
show, and we couldn't because they'd released stuff on CD
Oh,
Baby,
really?
and we kept getting stricken for it, and we couldn't, even though with like written permission from them, we couldn't figure out how to. So we eventually gave up. But we have some great bumper music, and it's really appreciate those artists that do put that music out there for use. If you look at Rattle's YouTube channel under the video, it says all the lists of the artists that contribute to the videos there from the YouTube audio library. It's a good thing to remind people about. But so as far as collaborating goes, why is it that you feel like what do you gain? Like, why not be a poet? Doing your own thing, making your own music, and not collaborating. What do you get out of working with people? Because that's another thing that poets tend not to do.
Well, I'll answer that in a couple of ways. The first one is for a very selfish reason. No one succeeds on their own. It takes a village. There's so many examples of that in terms of how people work together. Even as a relationship, as a poet, you need an audience, you need a reader, and you want them to respond. And then you can extend that out to the backwards, retrospectively into the creative process. So first off, it's selfish. Like, I want to succeed. I want my work to be out there, and making connections with people is one way of doing that. The other side of it is that it makes you a better creator, I think, because if you're at home on your own reading something, writing something, you might go through stages, but at some point you're going to go, "This is amazing! I've written the best thing that's ever been written." And then, you'll go see something live that blows your piece out of the water because you weren't aware of it, and you're writing in a vacuum. And I think that's a danger of a lot of young poets. Hate to be preaching, but it's my teacher side here, that you don't know what to rebel against unless you know what's out there in the first place. You're just going to end up repeating eternity if you're not aware of it. And people have been talking about love and hate and all the emotions and all the events throughout all time, and part of a job of a creative is to do it differently. And how can you possibly do it differently if you don't know what's already been written yesterday and 1,000 years ago?
Yeah, well, really well said. I want to get to two more pieces before we wrap it up. So we're going to do your second to last one now, and then we'll do one more question, and then we'll do it last.
Okay. Okay, well, why don't we... I suppose I should do the title poem from the collection. So... I actually wanted to mention that the title poem would not have existed without Rattle. So that I'll share the screen, which I think is this bit first. So all my poems, I talked about having link trees. So link tree, a bird on a string, and so on. So this is the link tree for Even God Gets Distracted Sometimes, which is the title poem. And you can see Mark's, the artist, draft versions and alternate versions and live versions and remixes. And I think I had it on a commentary somewhere. I won't play the volume for it, but it was...
Hello, folks.
It was an Ekphrastic from 2017, Tim. This amazing...
I remember that, yeah.
Right, so I wrote a poem called Distractions. I won't take it personally that you didn't pick that poem. That's fine, Tim. It was a long time ago, so I got over it. But I reworked the poem and it became the title poem here. And I'll just share now the PowerPoint version again. So hopefully that's working.
Yep.
And yeah, so I showed Mark the poem, and he kept the bird sort of image there, and it became the front cover and the title poem there as well. So we used the image that Mark did behind the text of the actual title, and it's available as a poem version, but this is the song version of Even God Gets Distracted Sometimes. I got halfway through and then gave up. The deep and empty orbits, the breast strung out like a Stradivarius, the wings thin as slices of veal soaked in a milky confidence. All those instructions to earth and serpent slithering, whispering again, and those two malcontents dining on something that they were told not to buy. I was thinking of tinkering with the tendons. The first incarnation tore in half on takeoff. A failed, soulless game, squalling and screeching, ripping at its own guts and dissolving away. All those frictions to earth, that serpent slithering, whispering again, and those two malcontents dining on something that they were told not to pluck. The second mishmash from matter, from that miscarriage of a brother, did no better. It dived headfirst into a mountain, collapsed during collision, waiting to be reassembled. I recycled instead for this third half attempt to cram all those instructions to earth, that serpent slithering and whispering again, and those two malcontents dining on something that they were told not to pluck. If I had more time, I would finish it. Really, I would. Now the wind stands still, the sun sinks its shape to a lunar self. The light echoes through my room as I hear all I can hear. All I can hear is last week's work line. All instructions to earth, that serpent slithering and whispering again, and those two malcontents dining on something that they were told not to pluck. Wow! All the instructions to earth, that serpent slithering, whispering again, and those two malcontents dining on something that they were told explicitly not to pluck. Done.
Yeah, well, that was great too. I mean, that was Even God Gets Distracted Sometimes, the title poem and performance from Luigi's book, which came out not too long ago, with those illustrations by Mark Shuttleworth.
It's difficult to judge where my hands are going to go for this, but anyway.
Yeah, well, that's great. Yeah, another really fun one. We haven't talked about the way you approach a poem, which is like what we usually talk about the whole episode, pretty much. So, but you have so much other thing, so many other things that you do. But we haven't. I want to talk a little bit about how you approach that, because your poems so often have both a humor and then they feel a little unsettling at the same time, and there's like a tension between those two. And most of the poems, I don't know if I could say all, but most of the poems that I've read of yours do that, where they're playing around with that line between the two. And I'm curious, like, how you conceive of that and what you're going for, how you approach a poem in that way.
I think I really liked how you described my poetry. I'll take all that as a compliment, definitely. I think unsettling is a really good word to use, because not necessarily just of my work, but I think a poem should unsettle. It should knock you back. And if I go back to that Philip Larkin line, they F you up your mum and dad, that unsettled me, that shocked me, that anyone would think that about their parents. And as soon as I was unsettled by that line, I realized how true it was. And the best type of poetry does that as well, I think. There's Marianne Moore's poem Poetry, where she begins, even I too dislike it. I think when I first read that as well, and I'm such a fan of poetry, but god damn, it annoys me sometimes. And not just other people's poems, but my poems as well annoy me. So I think it in terms of the writing process, there's a tug of war, there's a wrestle. And if you're engaged with it, I find that I'm fighting with the poem, and it wins, and it should win. It should win. Michelangelo talked about he wasn't a sculptor. He had a block of marble, and he just took away the bits to reveal the angel that was inside the marble, as as a sort of theological interpretation of his art. And I think, I'm agnostic myself, but I think there's the truth in that the poem wants to be what it wants to be. And if you struggle with it to get to where it needs to be, that's fine. But if you're wrenching it and morphing it to become something that you don't want it to be, then I don't, my experience, that doesn't work. Marianne Moore is a good example of that poem, where there's the 1,000-line version and then the 5-line version of poetry. Mm-hmm. And she went back and forward with that as well. And so one thing would be wrestling with the poem to help it become the best it needs to be. And also, I think drafting is so important. I think, again, this was a failing in me as a young poet. I would write a first draft. I might change a few words, and then I've created a masterpiece. It's done. It's amazing. And of course, it was the initial outpouring of emotion which tricks you into thinking that it's done. But then you read the poem 6 months later and it's trash. Or there's a spark of something that was really good. And the drafting is so important. And the best, for me, I'm trying to avoid saying this is what you should do. I can only ever speak for myself. The best editing tool that I have is time. You write a poem one day, and if you can, put it in a drawer or a virtual folder, I suppose, and leave it for as long as you can. Now, I bet you'll be tempted to look at it in an hour later because you think of something. But if you can leave it for a week, a month, a year, and then come back to it and see what's still true, see what still works, because time will changes everything. And reflecting on work and what still works after you've grown up a little bit, even if it's just by a day, I think is really, really powerful. So that initial wrestling with the poem to help it become the best it can be, and then drafting and working on it until you can get it to the last place. If I was to say a third thing, if I can squeeze it in, other people Yes, you don't want to be in an echo chamber. You want to find out what other people write, because if you're just writing a poem for yourself that only works for you, there's no point. So send it to Tim, and he'll let you know whether it's good enough for Rattle or not. Give it to your best friend, give it to a stranger, give it to your old school teacher, give it to someone that you trust their opinion of as well, to read back, and have that thick skin to allow yourself to be told, this doesn't work for me, this isn't a good poem. And hopefully you don't end friendships like that because they hated your poem. You take that advice on board, because just because it works for you doesn't mean it's going to work for anyone else. And surely that's the point of art, that you're communicating, that you want to share your experiences. And if you're only sharing it with yourself, then what's the point?
Yeah, well, really, really well said. Let's close out with one last poem, Luigi.
Okay. Should we do another poem or song? What do you reckon? I think
whatever you want. However you want to close it out.
I like. Okay. Okay. Let's do string theory. So, part of the writing process was that, along with the book, I'm publishing music as well and putting that online, and I try to present things in different ways as much as possible. So I actually wrote the poem first. So I wrote string theory, going back to Philip Larkin. He wrote a poem called, I think it's called Water, and he imagined that water was the beginning of a religion. And I wanted to emulate my hero, and I thought, what can I think of that's even more boring than water? String. Let's make a religion out of string. And so this is called string theory, and Mark drew this horrific string monster, kaiju sort of evil creature, which I think is amazing. But this is the song version of string theory as my last piece. Happen to have a piece of string with you, or even a headphone cord or a wire, please hold it, pray to it, clasp it, caress it, and maybe pray along with me. And my final piece, hopefully the solid string will bless you tonight for listening. This is string theory. We settled on string, having tried and failed to use, among other things, wood, plastic fire, bread, talcum powder, vitamins, and thought. First we pulled apart the strands and untwisting of a Russian doll's hair, each with laughing at the hair on the hands that tugged them free. It spoke to us in our dreams. We want to rope burns on faces, our bodies strung up. It spoke to us in our dreams, a tourniquet of faith, blood and hope clogging our veins. We licked each end, thread from cosmic needle. We burnt loose wisps away. We pulled and tugged and jerked until held erect and then parallel to our feet, quivering at the tension, and the real work began. Shapes and outlines twined and twirled till a form formed in the air, a structure of twine, a frozen explosion. To us in our dreams we walked, the rope burns on faces, our bodies brother. It spoke to us in our dreams, the tourniquet of faith, blood and hope clogging our veins. Mercurial, morphing, warping, twisting in the breeze of our side. That night, we rested in shadows, exhausted children in a spineless cradle, with lines of black cast on sweating skin. On pieces, our bodies sprung up. It spun us in our dreams, the tourniquet of faith, blood and hope, plugging, blood, yes, it spun us in our dreams. We walked folks. Thank you so much. That was my last piece. I'm glad it's my last piece because I've got no energy left. But thank you so much. And that was the God of String, hopefully blessing you tonight.
Well,
this
thanks so
afternoon
much
for you folks.
Yeah, thanks so much, Luigi. That was just really inspiring to see poetry presented in this different way with so much energy and creativity involved. Yeah, as everyone's saying, it's so fun to watch, amazing. Creator beats the market now in creative, says Errol Dog. Someone, Paul's got a new favorite poet, he says. So thanks so much, Luigi, for being here. It's been such a pleasure. And really, it was inspiring seeing the way you approach poetry in a different way, with performance being at the heart of it, which, it was historically and it should be again. So thanks for being here and doing that.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tim. And and all the great work that Rattle does as well. All the best for the future, folks. See you another time.
Yeah, definitely. My pleasure. Thanks, Luigi. Once again, that was Luigi Coppola. You can find all of Luigi's work at those link trees, which you mentioned. I think the main one, the best place to go is Linktree Poetry Preacher. Poetry Preacher, all one word. If you're not familiar with Linktree, the URL actually is linktr.ee. So it kind of spells Linktree with a dot in there. And then Poetry Preacher. Find that. Find all of Luigi's work. You can find so many videos. He's got a YouTube channel. He's got just tons of mixed media performance stuff. So find all of that whenever you'd like. And we're going to take a quick break and go to our prompt lines. And the prompt for this week was to consider your most controversial opinions and boldly write a poem about at least one without apologizing for the stance. Include a fresh metaphor. That was your prompt for this week. If you submitted a poem by midnight last night, Katie sent an email inviting about, 8 to 10 people or so to the show today. Check your inbox for that Zoom link and join us if you have it. We're going to share our own poems, of course, and we'll be right back with a whole lot more poetry. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. I'm here with my creative editor, my wife, my creative editor, our prompt poems editor, Katie Dozier. How you doing, Katie?
I'm doing great. We're going to switch things up a little bit because one of our guests on the invited prompt lines needs to go to an appointment. And so we don't normally do this, but we're going to hear from Michelle DeRose first, and then we'll get back to our poems.
Yeah. Hey, Michelle, how you doing?
Hello. Thank you for having me. I'm doing okay. I'm a little bit nervous. This is my first time reading, and it is about a controversial opinion I have only known that I have held for a little more than 3 weeks now.
Okay.
This is, don't call this a journey. Journeys begin with passports and plans, paddle routes to islands with one sight, proper footwear, layered clothing, literal exhausted climbs, rewarded with views sublime. At most, a side trip to urgent care, a single stitch or steri strip. This bullet train of dark thoughts, an invitation to Baton, an entrance fee at every station, a siege, an invasion. I unlock gates to hostile forces, pray they're cruel enough to what came first, angels of death to all its offspring. My port, the bloodied lintel, a plea to let me live.
Well, Michelle, I find it so remarkable that you turned to poetry in this difficult time. And I find that so inspiring when people are able to in the immediacy of a really difficult situation. And, I also think in your note, you talked about these, pamphlets that have smiling people on the front and say, cancer, this is a journey. And I also thought it was remarkable, the creativity, and because the prompt involved a fresh metaphor, so calling out a metaphor that is not working or making anyone feel better probably at the time, I thought was really impactful too.
Thank you. But yes, it's very immediate. I need to go now to a doctor's appointment.
Yes.
So.
Well, we will be thinking of you, Michelle, and it was wonderful to get to meet you.
Yeah, thanks so much, and best of luck for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah. So that was Michelle DeRose with Don't Call This a Journey. Yeah.
So I find out if you wrote a poem this week.
I did write a poem.
Good
What about
job.
you? Yeah.
I did write a poem. You know I did because you had to paste it into the
That's true.
document.
Yeah, that's
you
true.
always know if I did or not. But what was funny to me about this particular poem was I don't think you've read mine. You just paste it in, and it's pretty appropriate for what you and Luigi were discussing often, I think, during the course of your conversation together. So I pull it up on my phone because I, unlike all the London poets, haven't memorized. And I definitely haven't spent 3 hours with this. I didn't even spend 3 hours writing
Well, it didn't exist 3 hours ago, I don't think.
Yeah, that's accurate too.
Okay.
Would you care to join us? I remember my shock at heading into a DQ in Kentucky to smell a smoking section, and in the haze, confusing the metal ashtrays for tiny plates of steaming food. There was no wall to separate the section. How many hostesses once asked, smoking or non? Yet poets warble on, wondering why no one wants to sit with us. Miss Stoutfire loved to sit beside smokers without wanting to light up. Now, look at what we have become, an ashtray full of butts. And when did we start microwaving meals? The chicken nuggets and the fries mush. Picnic in the bluegrass, green fiddles.
Well, yeah, great haiku, great poem there. I love that.
Well, thank you. I don't know. It was funny. I thought of this DQ. It was in high school that it was like, I swear, like the last place at a smoking section in Kentucky, where I transferred and went back to school after having grown up somewhat in Kentucky, and in that DQ. It wasn't though when we went back, because we actually went back to Stanford a couple years ago, Stanford, Kentucky. And I was curious if they still had a smoking section, but they did not.
Did we? I remember driving by it, but we didn't go in, did we?
I went in at some point. I guess maybe it wasn't that trip, and I saw
might
that it
have
was
been. I was trying
gone
to
because I was
remember.
endlessly curious. But I was. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that always reminds me. I was like, I really at some point I was just saying to somebody, "Oh, I haven't seen anybody smoking anymore," and then we moved out into the desert, and I was playing a softball game. And the outfielder goes to catch a fly ball, and I see him smoking while catching the fly ball. I'm like, we're not in Los Angeles anymore.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, one of those I can remember when there were smoking sections is like, historians would be able to time me when I lived, I think, because I remember it a lot. So
Yeah.
and it was
true.
around when Miss Doubtfire
Yeah.
reigned supreme as the glorious movie it is. Okay.
Yeah, great movie. Yeah. Okay. Well, mine is this. Right here, this is Voting. Also a memory poem. Voting. I miss the me who would miss democracy. My first year with a name on the rolls, I stepped inside the same steel box my father lifted me in 1984. The same red lever flung to the right, closed the same plaid curtain. It smelled like an attic and auto grease. The machine was purely mechanical, nothing but gears and pivots and rods that clacked and clicked like the keys of an iron typewriter. Not an amp of electricity, but still the ballot felt like a fuse box, that gunmetal gray, riveted shut, the heavy switches locking into place, like their weight could spark. At 4, I could sound out the names that meant nothing. Ronald Reagan like the McDonald's clown, Mondale like a brand of chair. At 20, I picked the guy whose dad won once for his cabinet of familiar faces, confident that the sounds of the odometer rolling ahead somewhere inside that industrial tank. Later, my mother admitted she canceled mine out, voting for the other guy's pale blue eyes. Honest, I asked. Pretty, she said, as I helped myself to a second helping of pasta, annoyed, as if the static of our voices was a flaw. That is my poem where I confess to voting for George Bush.
Oh, God.
That is rough. I don't know what the hell, but that's why, young people shouldn't vote.
All right. The controversies are flying left and
They
right
are.
here.
Try to set you up.
That's her. Well, I didn't know that. So I've learned something about
Yeah,
Tim
that's rough.
today.
I don't know if I've ever confessed that. I think
I don't think you told me that before, sir. No,
Okay.
well, that is interesting. Because the one thing I really struggled with my own prompt, which is probably annoying to everybody to hear, but that's the truth. I thought this was a harder prompt than I thought it was when I wrote it, was this whole, if I start thinking about poetry and how we just need to write better poems to get people to like poetry, and I really do think that is the bulk of the problem. We got to stop being like, it's not you, it's me, or the opposite of that, or whatever. It's really hard to not get on a soapbox and start preaching, right? Mm-hmm. And so there were a lot of poets that really struggled with this when they went in a political direction. So well done.
Oh, thank you.
Didn't struggle with it. Yeah.
Well, thank you. Let's go next to our community host, Dick Westheimer.
Yes.
Hey, Dick.
Hey, and Katie, just a note. Tim's voting in 19 whenever is not grounds for annulment.
Oh, okay, thanks. I was going to ask.
There's a statute of limitations.
Okay.
There is.
Yeah,
it was yesterday.
And I was reminded with your smoking sections, there was a restaurant in downtown Cincinnati that was very narrow shotgun, and it had smoking section down one side and non-smoking down the other. So everybody in the restaurant was one table away from somebody smoking or non-smoking.
Yeah.
I don't think they got the idea. So speaking of controversy, both Tim and Katie, I think you'd be interested in the prompt lines debates that are raging about controversial opinions, especially about the assertion that propaganda is the opposite of poetry. And there's some really strong and well-reasoned, I think Jared Campbell has a part of his doctoral thesis he put into the chat. Very interesting conversation.
Check that out.
We're trying to get people to join, not scare them away. No, just kidding, Jared.
No, I don't think it would scare away. It's just all. I mean, because the prompt has so much sort of strangeness to it with poetry, opinions, controversy, not apologizing, when so much of a poem is about sort of like being open to whatever. So lots of discussion there about poetry. It was great to have it.
And that's on the
discussion.
Facebook group, Rattlecast
Yep,
Prompts.
it's on the prompt.
Yep,
Yeah.
we're over 1,000 members strong, and we just keep getting bigger every day. I even approved a few new members during the show. So
Good job.
yeah.
Nice. People who obviously answered both the questions.
Yes, please answer both questions. Otherwise, you may not be a real person. Plus, I want to know the answer to the questions. So
Yes. Yeah. Answers are great. So I tried. I don't know if I got away from the rhetorical or not, but because I am on team no rhetoric, no propaganda, as opposed to Jared, who said, power to the people. Use lyrical verse to sell your point. Here we go. Dear friend, I once talked with about everything. Like that time we wondered why no one told the quarter moon when to nest in our mulberry tree. Or remember we bet on who instructed the migrating warbler where to rest, or the morning we decided the blue sky could not help being blue. But you and I can no longer talk about the war. about what color the sky is over displacement camps, or of the lice and rats and refugees living under tattered blue tarps on Gaza Beach. Some say the God of our ancestors foretells everything. So I ask, does he know on which arm the weasel will bite 4-year-old Miocene? Does he know where each bone lies under the remains of every home rubbled in this war? Or why all those lice prefer children's skin? You, my friend, tell me I must not call this war waged in a shaken cage, these homes picked up and crushed like trash in a truck, that old Sidhu's hunger packaged up and sold for some nation state's tribal pride. You walk away when I say genocide. And I tell you how much I hate saying the word, and that my tribe has forgotten its scar, and that my tribe has forgotten its scars. But when I am told by the gods and friends and kings that the warbler I heard sing this morning is not a warbler, I have vowed from now on to believe my ears.
Yeah, really cool poem. Love the movement in that, Dick.
Thanks.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it
Appreciate you
too.
all.
I have a bad echo. So.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, I was.
Oh, okay. And I just love the exploration of the interview today. I didn't get to hear the whole thing, but the part I'm gonna go back and next time I might be here with my loop machine and background of who knows.
Well, as community host, I think you owe us that.
Oh goodness. No pressure.
Well, Luigi joined a small group of people who played music on the Rattlecast, including Dick Westheimer. Do you remember that, Dick? Breaking
the
out
end
I
of
do,
the
I do
episode.
remember.
Yeah, that was
I'll
a
have to go
highlight.
back
That really
and
was.
see what kind of fool I made of myself.
No.
Oh, it was wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
it
everybody should go back and watch Dick's episode.
Honestly, too, if it had been terrible, we wouldn't have invited you to be community host. So a lot was on the line
Yeah.
with your playing.
Speaking of a lot on the line, the 31st at 7 o'clock Sunday night with the wonderful, amazing, irreverent, and thoughtful Francesca Bell.
Wow, look at that segue. Just a pro through and through, Dick Westheimer. Thank you. That'll be a great community reading, I'm sure, with Francesca Bell on the 31st of this month. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it. Bye.
Yeah, as our very own community host, Dick Westheimer, with dear friend I once talked with about everything. Next, let's go to Heather Kays.
Hi.
Hey, Heather. So
Hey,
you're
Heather.
back with the poem that made me laugh out loud.
I'm just going to jump right in.
Great.
There is one opinion that has gotten me into trouble more consistently than politics, religion, or admitting I think most IPA beer tastes like cheap perfume steeped in grapefruit rind. I think Jane Austen is overrated. Not bad, just overrated, which apparently is worse. A former coworker once looked at me like I had confessed to drowning swans in the park. You just don't understand her, she said, clutching her coffee cup like it contained the last surviving copy of Pride and Prejudice. But I didn't understand it. I understood it 3 separate times because people kept insisting the problem was me. I read Austen the way people reheat leftovers, hoping the second time will reveal hidden depth. It never did. Years later, at NYU, a professor assigned us a prompt about our favorite and least favorite writers. I wrote and shared, Jane Austen is the most overrated author I have ever read. Then the professor announced her favorite novel of all time was Pride and Prejudice. The room got so quiet I could hear my GPA coughing in the distance. There is no graceful way to walk back literary blasphemy. So when she asked, which writer would I most like to have dinner with, I said Bukowski, so I can ask him if he thinks he's sexist. That bought me back just enough feminist street cred to survive the semester. The thing is, I wanted to love Austen. I gave her more chances than I have given most men. People talk about her novels like they are sacred heirlooms passed down through generations of women who underline passages while soaking in clawfoot tubs. In all honesty, I preferred Pride and Prejudice and zombies. Finally, the social climbers started eating each other. Thank you.
Yeah, Heather, this is so funny. I really enjoyed it. And I did think it was one of the most true to the prompt in terms of being a controversial opinion. And you let us live through the controversy as you experienced it in class, which was really funny too. And honestly, I have to say, I love the stories behind Jane Austen. But I think that, if she'd been alive today to write with the benefit of like everything we know about writing today, I think it would have been amazing. But I love the stories, but it's hard to read the actual just text. I agree with you. So thank you for being brave enough to write that one in a poem so that I could admit it too.
Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Heather.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, that was Heather K. with Jane Austen is overrated.
And that's boldly, that's not cheapish there with that title.
Yeah. Right out front. Let's go next to Clayton Clark.
With her boldly colored walls.
Oh,
Yes.
Hi, Clayton.
Had music after that incredible interview. But yeah, and I'm not sure how, controversial my poem is, but I was stuck in political thought and I was like, no, can't go there. I'll go ahead. Cracker Jack. Achieve perfectly round cookies, a headline states. But why? Why leave out abstract shapes or cookies that look like grenades? What matters is they should taste like the sun breaking through clouds on a cold down day. Should excite the sniff and tongue. Who cares if they're perfectly round? I've heard it said too many times of late, too many poets write too many poems, not up to snuff, and muck up the stuff of the perfect. Poor Vincent van Gogh made less than a dime in his short time of bringing peasants, sunflowers, and starry nights to life. I bet he was seen as a bad impressionist who couldn't capture soft, perfect pastel light. Noses turned up and away from the portent of 100 years hence, as a heavy-handed boot-stomp punk rocker of paint, brush, and knife. Maybe he'd not have cut off that ear if anyone had lent him one. An ear, an eye, a cheering remark, and dimes. Swan song. The crow flies off with gold in its beak.
Which makes you want to go back and look at the title again so that we can appreciate the high bun links to each other with Cracker Jack, and I think of a Cracker Jack toy. And Clayton, one thing I enjoy so much about this is that I think there's kind of a tradition in Haibun where it's almost like for the poem body, like it has to be all in the same moment or the same topic, and you can't like have these wonderful like free versey type leaps and movement, and yours has so much. I mean, we start with cookies and end with Van Gogh, which is really wild to think about, but it all feels very logical at the same time, which I think is one of the things I love the most about poetry, is when a poet can take something like that and make it seem like, yes, of course we're now talking about Van Gogh when we were talking about cookies. So I really enjoyed it. Thanks.
And that leaping is because of you two. I mean, it's really changed the way I write. So thanks.
Aw, well, thank you.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Clayton.
Yeah, and great to see you.
You too. Bye.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'll be on mute.
She's like, bye forever.
Bye.
Yeah, that was Clayton Clark with Cracker Jack. Let's go next to Deborah Murphy.
Thank you. Mine is very light and short, but it was fun to feel like I had permission to write it. I am a 72-year-old woman, and I think old men are gross. A bowl of oatmeal, it's not even hot, just lumpy. How could this possibly be good for my heart.
Well, Deborah, I have to say I definitely laughed out loud after reading your submission on this. And I love the commitment to the metaphor here. And you really honed in on that part of the prompt, wanting a fresh metaphor and thinking of it as oatmeal. It's one of those things, too, that feels like, it should be a cliche. It's that strong a metaphor and that powerful. But obviously, it's actually very fresh and interesting, unlike the oatmeal itself, I suppose.
Yeah, that is a great example of extending a metaphor, because I thought it was done and then I kept going, and that's sort of like what makes it a punchline.
Yeah,
almost.
it definitely is. And I also like the contrast between the long title and then the short lines and the really short poem. There's also, I think, humor in that too. And
Right.
just, we need that title. We need the frame, of where is this vantage point coming from also. So,
Right.
yeah. So I really enjoyed it. And thanks for writing it and for feeling the freedom to do it, because I found it really amusing. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Deborah. Yeah, that was Deborah Murphy with I'm a 72-year-old woman and I think old men are gross.
That's declarative. Yeah.
Okay. Next, let's go to Colleen Farley. Colleen, who has a poem in Poet Respond not too long ago. And that poem, I'm sure Colleen knows, but I haven't posted about it, is in Nature magazine. Is it Nature, right?
Yeah. So thank you for choosing that.
Yeah, so there's an article about, and that thing, I haven't had a chance to actually read it yet. I got an email about it a few days ago.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know this.
About
That's
scientists using poetry. And so Colleen is a scientist and uses poetry and ended up in Nature.
That's wonderful.
Pretty cool.
Wow, how cool.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is another one about my work as a mathematician that kind of leaps into other things. It's called Butterfly Effect. Chaos theory states that initial conditions matter, those frozen variables lurking behind equations. A flutter here, a blizzard there. Both impact the final state of a system like a faulty break on an icy bank. He skidded into my life in late autumn, his eyes bright and his mind filled with blue morpho facts. I didn't know his age until winter break. Spring migration. I pick a college closer to his.
Yeah, another great Hyben.
Yeah, it really is wonderful. It's a great week for Hybens, and this is no exception. It's hard to write about butterflies because we all want to, but I really thought the way you did here was fresh and did adhere to that part of the prompt. And I really, his mind filled with blue morpho facts. I thought that was really interesting because it's obviously like a literal, like he knows a lot of facts about this type of butterfly, but also felt like, I really let myself sort of swim with that and think like, well, what else does that mean? What is a blue morpho fact also, a metaphor for? So I thought it was really interesting and really nice leap with the haiku that takes us to a different place and shows us, the implications of the poem body section. So I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Colleen.
Thanks and congratulations. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And it was Colleen Farley with Butterfly Effect. All right. And let's go next to Jayanthi Rangan. It's been a bit for Jayanthi. Great to see you.
Hi, good to see you too.
Hi.
Katie, thank you. It was, the time worked out this time in the afternoon.
Yeah, it's the nice thing about changing the start time.
Yeah.
We get more people in that aren't usually.
I know. So this is the the controversial thing that I thought of. Generally we have so many rooms, we name them, we say, oh, this is a drawing room and things like that, and fill it up with furniture. So I'll start reading this. It says, rooms that move. Furniture block space, rigid, but some fold into crisp origami and create a dance floor, a yoga mat, reshape small city rooms. So little to clean. The room talks and listens, opening out, growing, stretching before a leap. Decluttering becomes a mindset. Besides, with 10 beds, 9 beds vacant, only 1 slept in. Scuba dive, a world you borrow and leave it drip dry. my sanctuary unfolds.
Well, Jayanthi, I thought that this was such a great way to physically imagine the idea of being a more open person and having more openness in general, because you allowed us to think specifically about rooms. You know, of course, I went to like thinking about my own house and like imagining if we didn't have furniture everywhere, because I obsess over furniture arrangements and things like that. So imagining that, I think it really worked as a wonderful metaphor for being open.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, thank you so much. Because of late on my Instagram, I'm getting these ads for folding furniture. And I love it. I love it so much. I know that I might not end up buying them, but they look so good. They transform like the children's toys. One moment they are bed, and the next moment they are something so totally different.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's satisfying to me. I really love those. I've seen the tables that expand massively from like a small side table to like a table for 20 or whatever. I think those are fascinating.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, well, thanks so
Great
much
to
for
have you
sharing
on,
that, Jayanthi.
Jayanthi.
Yeah, great to hear
Thanks.
you again. Yeah.
Bye.
It's Jayanthi Rangan with Rooms That Move. All right. And now Jeff Stumpo sent one in, and Katie said it's okay to read it for him.
Yeah.
He's in the car line. I think he said picking up his kids.
Yeah.
Something like that.
The guest was it only last week that he was on?
He was the guest last week, but it was
Jeff
8 days
Stumpo.
ago.
That's why it feels like it was so long.
Feels
And
like 2
because it
years.
was such a great episode, it feels like a lot of time must have passed
Definitely,
already.
it was.
It was really fun to get to hear you talk to Jeff more.
Okay, so here's Jeff's controversial poem that he sent in. A cliche haiku, form over philosophy, all moons still lovely.
And then the joke is too that it's a 575 haiku, which is like, and the notes like, Katie, you really might not. So I thought it was funny.
Well, that's very fun. Thanks, Jeff. There's Jeff Stumpo with a haiku. And that's going to wrap up the prompt lines for today.
Yeah, thank you for everybody who was invited on. It was really wonderful to get to hear from you and see some new faces too.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. So we're gonna go to our haiku to close out the show.
A lot of haiku this episode.
A lot of haiku.
turned
It's a
out.
bit, yeah.
I think that this one is for you, and you're gonna enjoy this one.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm
And this
ready.
is like hearkening back to the roots of the haiku on the Rattlecast, the saiku.
The haiku.
About
okay.
a science story you told me about this week.
That's true. Yeah. Go ahead.
Hope is a thing with feathers T-Rex. Because you told me that they found out that T-Rex, at least baby T-Rexes, had feathers for sure.
Yeah, juvenile T-Rexes, have had feathers. So
Yeah.
pretty big feathers too.
The
relative to
debate
their
was if
size,
I
yeah.
should do baby T-Rex or not. I
No,
think it's
perfect.
better with T-Rex, but
Yeah, that's not exactly what you'd expect.
and then one of the jokes of this is I'm telling it slant because literally I italicized Emily Dickinson's words.
Ah, there you go. You did. Nice. I did not pick up on that layer.
Well, neither did the T-Rex. Okay. What do you have for us?
Okay, well, I went with a monoku as well. Is this peeling the whole orange summer?
That's nice.
Yeah, peeling the whole orange summer. That is our.
Also, we need to eat the oranges in our kitchen.
We
so
do.
Thanks. Maybe we can put that on the fridge and the kids will get the hint.
Yeah, good idea. All right, so that is going to wrap up our show for this week. Now, what is next week's prompt, Katie?
Next week, we are going to write an after poem to one of the Rattle Poetry Prize finalist poems. So this can be from any year, I want to say too, and not just last year. Of course, submissions are open for the Rattle Poetry Prize, and I thought it was a good time for people to just go ahead and be able to look at the poems that have won over the years. So we're going to write an after poem to one of the Rattle Poetry Prize finalist poems. Make sure not to take the magic from the source poem. If you want more on that, we talked about that in our 2-part on after poem series on the poetry space, and I would really recommend it because we put a lot of thought into that. And you want to make sure you're not just rewording the poem, because that's a problem. That's plagiarism.
Best
It's a
way to
form
go
of
about it is
plagiarism.
to think of something you like disagree with and want to argue with.
Find an
Make it like
entry
that.
point and then
or expand on, but definitely not restate. Yeah.
And focus on transformation, which is convenient because that is the third sentence in a rare 3-sentence prompt for me. Instead, create your own transformation, which also sounds like a hair coloring ad. But we'll ignore that for the time being.
Yeah, and also I see in the wording, it's one of the Rattle Poetry Prize finalist poems, not necessarily last year. So there's,
exactly. There's
21 years.
It's a good excuse to reread the 1 year before, when I wasn't affiliated with Rattle and got to enter. I went back and I reread like all of them. What a good excuse,
Yeah, well, there you go. So. Well, that's your prompt for this week. Write an after poem to one of the Rattle Poetry Prize finalist poems. Make sure not to take the magic from the source poem. Make it, don't take it. Instead, create your own transformation. Great prompt, Katie. Looking forward to that. Great promotion, too, with the Poetry Prize season kicking off.
Well, to be honest, I wasn't even aware that it was open yet, so I felt like we needed to make other people aware.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, okay. Well, great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyway, next week's guest in the Rattlecast is going to be Lisa Wells. Now, Lisa was originally scheduled for back in March. She had a family emergency. We rescheduled it. She's speaking of Rattle Poetry Prize finalist. Hey, is that a coincidence or not? I guess you had that in mind.
I don't know.
Well, there you go.
I don't even question if it's a coincidence or not. I don't even know.
You just picked it up through
just
osmosis.
happens.
Yeah. Anyway, Lisa Wells is a finalist. One of those great poems from the Rattle Poetry Prize. And her newest book is The Fire Passage. She's an editor. She does a whole lot within poetry. I'm looking forward to this episode with Lisa next Monday, May 18th, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. That's the regular time, Rattlecast 343. Hope you have a great week. In the meantime, we'll talk to you later. Goodbye.
Goodbye.